Welcome to Left on Red Media, where we're redefining the left of politics and communicating a new vision for the British left. And as part of a new series where we're interviewing new Labour MPs, I'm delighted to say our first interview is with David Sampson, the Labour MP for Southend West and Leigh. David, welcome.
Hi Abdi, how are you?
Good, thank you very much. Thank you
Good.
for coming to this.
My pleasure.
And it's brilliant to obviously see as a Labour MP in Southend West.
Thank you.
And am I right in thinking you're the first Labour MP?
First Labour MP ever in Southend West and Leigh. In fact, both myself and my colleague Bio are the first Labour MPs ever in Southend. It's been Tory since 1908, and before that it was Liberal. So yeah, quite a feat really.
That really is brilliant. And it's not just that, you've obviously navigating your way around a constituency, you've also been given a role by the Labour Party chair, Ellie Reeves, and you are the business champion for finance as well, am I right in thinking?
I am, yes, yeah. A role I'm really enjoying so far.
So they're keeping you busy. It's,
Absolutely. Baptism of fire, as they say, yeah?
No, too right. So let's, just to give people a bit of an insight into you, what got you into politics? What was the moment that you can put down to your entry into politics?
Yeah, well, it was really interesting actually. There was I was living in Langdon Hills, part of Basildon, and I got a letter from the local council telling me that I needed to pay £3,000 to have my water pipes replaced. I was like, hang on a minute, you're the council, you're not the water board. Why are you trying to charge me to replace water pipes? So I started a local campaign, and within a week or so, I had about 400 households on board. And I was running these sort of campaign sessions where we were talking about the issue and talking about our strategy to take on the council. And a certain Baroness Basildon popped up at the back of the room. She was with the candidate for the local election, and Angela Smith, she had been the local MP for pretty much the whole of the Blair years and the Brown years. And she came along just to see how she could help out. Came up to me at the end of it and she said, "You're pretty good, you, aren't you?" I said, "Oh, I'm all right." She said, "You should join the Labour Party." And this is 2012. I said, "Well, it's funny that I joined the Labour Party in 2010 and nobody's spoken to me since." So, so she encouraged me to come out and do some campaigning. And then within 6 months, I was standing as a candidate. And then the rest is history. Yeah. So it's all down to Angela Smith, our leader in the House of Lords.
All the best things are always down to Angela Smith, I like to think. But
absolutely.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant that you set that campaign up. You started campaigning and then you were already active in the Labour Party. So that's...
absolutely. Here I am today.
Yeah. And so going from that experience and obviously running that campaign, getting to know residents, organising, obviously gave you a flair for much greater things. And that's why you're now a Labour MP. But what do you think, what experience have best prepared you to becoming an MP?
I think a couple of experiences, really. I think being a councillor really helped. I always describe this job as being a councillor on steroids. It is literally, it's a full-time job. In fact, it's more than a full-time job. It consumes your whole life. So, having that experience of being a councillor is a good grounding, although this is different. I think also from the point of view of running local campaigns, I set up Basildon Pride locally in Basildon. I set up an organisation called More in Common, working to reduce social isolation and so on and so forth. So setting up some of those local campaigns and organisations to bring social change, I think, has helped me. But also, I think the other thing I always think about is you can get a lot of stick being an MP, as I'm sure you're aware. It comes through lots of different medium, whether it's through social media, whether it's in person. And actually, I've had a lot of stick throughout my life because of who I am. And you've had to become a little bit hardened to that, the colour of my skin, the fact I'm a gay man, the fact I'm from Liverpool. I'm joking on that one. But, those sort of things you have to build a thick skin to get on in life sometimes. And that's helped me a little bit with this as well. I shouldn't have to, but I'm sorry, that's the reality of politics at the moment. It can be quite a vicious place. and you can get some real stick for stuff that's just totally not deserved.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And how your identity then plays back into the politics you have is just it's so natural to all of us. But it does really shape you in a way. And you're right, you know, you didn't need to have a thicker skin. You know, it wasn't something that you voluntarily did. You had to.
Exactly.
You had to grow that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so life as an MP now, completely different, I imagine.
Yes.
We've just spoken about some of the negative parts of it, particularly social media, as you, I'm sure your Twitter mentions are equally as glorious as every other MP I speak to.
Indeed.
What's different to what you expected from in your life to leading now as an MP?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's. I think I was prepared as far as I could be to go into this role. I don't think I had quite appreciated that it really does consume all of your time, and you've got to be really strict to make sure that you've got a life outside of your job, because ultimately this is a job. It's a bit of a calling as well. Yeah. You've got to really want to do this, because, you know, people look at MPs and think, oh, look at them getting paid whatever salary they get paid. You really work for it. You know, I'm, you know, at the moment I'm on a 19-day run without a day off. And you have to, because residents need you. You need to do your parliamentary business. You need to support local organisations. And all of those things operate at different times and often conflict. So, you know, certainly the time thing is a real thing. But I think I'm trying to be strict with myself to just carve out that little bit personal time, even if it's just half a day once a week. You know, ideally a weekend here and there, you know, would be nice. But, you know, I think that's probably the biggest thing, is the time commitment. It's not something that scares me. I'm used to it, because, again, you mentioned what grounded me ready for this role. When you're a councillor, you're doing a day job somewhere else, and then you do your councillor work in the evening and at weekends. So, you know, I'm sort of used to this sort of stuff.
Yeah. And you're right. And I'm assuming there's a bit that you like, and, you know, if you don't enjoy it, it really is quite hard work if you don't enjoy it. So kind of, you know, going to those community events, people think, you know, MPs just do that because it's part of the day job. Yeah. Actually, I think a lot of them enjoy it as well, actually, being able to speak to their residents.
Yeah, I do. I really enjoy it. You know, it's great to get just totally immersed in the community that you're part of. I think it's massively important, because you're representing them. So I try and spend as much time as possible through a variety of different ways, whether it be street surgeries or coffee mornings or visiting organisations, just listening to my residents. Because if I don't know what they're really saying and what they're really thinking, how can I react to that and take that message back to Westminster? Social medias are not necessarily a reflective place of reality. The real reflective place is when you're stood in front of that resident face to face, eyeballing them, and they tell you how it is. Yeah. And it's often not the same message you see on social media. Yeah.
And I imagine, like, the moment when you've done something for your constituent, or you've got a result for them, is probably the best feeling that anyone can feel, really.
Totally. And sometimes it's the smaller wins that are more powerful than the bigger stuff. Obviously, the bigger stuff everybody gets to see. So, you know, the stuff I'm working on at the moment, you know, like water quality and stuff like that. That's the real big bits that will make a real difference to everybody's lives. But when somebody's been homeless for 6 months and they can't see a future, and you manage to help them find that home through whatever means you can, and we will always go above and beyond to try and help our residents, and then they get in that home and it totally changes their life, you know, that's powerful. You know, especially when that person's saying, you know, I feel like I'm at the end now, I can't cope with this anymore, and you feel like you've almost saved somebody's life. It's not just down to me, though. A lot of people don't realise that we have outstanding teams behind us who support us in this role. Obviously, they work under our direction, but without, you've got to have those great teams behind you as well to make sure you can be successful in this job.
You're right. It's such a team effort, that, you know, being responsible for a constituency. But yeah, those sometimes small wins, people can see as small wins, are actually the biggest ones, and the knock-on effect that then it has on their family, for example.
Absolutely.
So what would you consider? Well, only a year into your
10
Westminster
months,
career.
10 months.
10 months.
Yeah.
10 months. Nearly a year.
Yeah.
What would you consider to be your most significant achievement in your political career so far?
In my political career as an MP or just generally?
You can add in as a councillor as well. I'll let you do that.
Well, I think genuinely my biggest achievement is becoming an MP. Because I would never have expected to be in this job. It wasn't the direction I was heading. I was building a career in finance, in banking. I was always a big community champion, wanting to make a difference in community. So actually this is a natural progression, but to have won that seat in Southend, a seat that, 5 years ago, Labour would have been a total no-goer to have won Southend West Leigh, and to have stood there on the 5th of July in the morning knowing that we had won it together as a team. Yes, I led that campaign, but it wasn't just down to me. Yeah. There was a whole team helped me get over that line. And that to me was the biggest achievement to date.
Yeah.
Plenty more to come, Abdi.
Absolutely.
Plenty more to come.
4 years and 2 months left, and then hopefully a second term. So
I hope so. I hope so.
So turning to some of the more challenging periods in the last 10 months of government and becoming an MP, we've obviously seen the rise of Reform, who are now, challenging not just the Conservatives, but also the Labour Party in very different seats right across the country. And we saw the local elections results. There are I've heard quite a lot of opinions on how to tackle them. But what do you think we should be doing, either nationally or even in Southend, for example? Because Clacton isn't that far from your constituency. How does the Labour Party respond to Reform?
It's a very good question, and it's one that we've got to address head on, I think. Reform aren't going away. They're here. They had, I guess, a really strong result in the local elections. But you know what? They've got 2 mayors now. They've got 10 councils they've got to run now. And that comes with a huge amount of responsibility. And I will be holding them to account, as I know many of my Labour colleagues will be holding them to account, to actually deliver now. This isn't about shouting slogans, popular slogans, which is a lot of what we've heard so far from Reform. They can carry on doing that, but they've also got to deliver now. And if they don't deliver, look, we've seen some of the councillors resigning already because they realise that they've got to do a job now. This isn't just about shouting slogans. So I'll be holding them to account for delivery, as I know many in the Labour Party will be. Jumping to Southend, for me, this is about me showing that my constituents made the right choice on the 4th of July last year. And I believe we all have to do this, because nationally the party has to keep focused, has to keep delivering on its manifesto commitments. And I believe we're doing that. And as the Prime Minister said, we've got to go faster, and we have got to go faster so that people start to feel the outcomes of what we're doing in the pockets on the NHS waiting list. When they need to go to the hospital, they get seen quickly. This is all about feeling. But I have a job to do locally. And that job is to make people know that they've made that right choice. And for me to be really embedded in that community, delivering for my residents consistently, and for them to be proud of what I'm doing for them and proud of the way I'm representing them. And from a standing start, that's a big task, but it's one that I'm taking on, and I'm doing everything I can to build that reputation locally over the next 4 years, 2 months that we've got left.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, the government promised change, and change doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't.
But in 10 months alone, there are some achievements to be proud of. The NHS waiting list alone coming down.
Yeah.
Is I mean, this is the first year we've not had a winter crisis in the NHS. The first time I've not heard on the news the NHS is going into winter crisis for a very, very long time.
Not like in previous. We've had challenges, and I think Wes Streeting has been quite clear that this last winter was not going to be easy. And it wasn't easy, but you're right, it wasn't as bad as previous, mainly because we had people actually working in the NHS and not striking. But, we're planning already for this year. He started planning with his department last year for what will happen this year. The work that Wes and his team are doing on transforming the NHS is just absolutely outstanding. And that is the difference that Labour government makes. That's the difference it's going to make to people's lives when they actually get treated, they get diagnosed quickly, they get the treatment they need. They can see their doctor, when they need to see the doctor without having to join that 8 a.m. dash to get an appointment. These are things that will make a difference to people's lives, and they're being delivered.
Yeah. And you're right, and that's a knock-on effect it has. Everyone kind of in their life knows someone that is going through some treatment with the NHS or trying to access the NHS. When people turn around and say, yeah, that was very smooth. Yeah. It's that knock-on effect that it has on people, that people have the confidence as well to come forward early for treatment, for example. It will save lives, that narrative just changing alone.
Absolutely.
But it is a mammoth task. You can't turn 14 years around in 10 months.
You can't. But then you also look at the economy, look at the work that Rachel and the team are doing, supported by Johnny in the Department of Business and Trade. We're seeing the economy stabilise. We're seeing interest rates fall for the 4th time since Labour have been in power. And that makes a difference to people's pockets, It's these sort of things that are going to show that everything we're doing, our plan for change, is working. We need to have confidence in the government, and we need to have confidence in the agenda that they're pursuing, which is all linked to our manifesto.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on that, because you spoke about the economy, obviously you have the role, the business champion role for in charge of finance, and that's your matter, your subject, your subject matter.
Well, perhaps you might like to say it as well, but yeah, we'll see.
I can't even get the words out.
Subject matter expert.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's your subject matter expert.
Yeah, apparently I am.
For finance, so how are you finding that role, particularly engaging with businesses and where they are with the current economic situation in the country?
Yeah. Look, I love this business champion role, and there are a number of us who hold these roles across the Parliamentary Labour Party. And the great thing is, firstly, just one thing I want to say on this, it reflects the fact of how many people that have come from real careers and aren't just career politicians that we have. And there's nothing wrong with career politicians, but we've got so many people that have come from industry, from business, who are now in our PLP. My background's finance, financial services, retail banking, mortgages, investments, insurance. So I understand, or I like to think I understand that area. So it gives me a bit of credibility, a bit of street cred when I talk to people from within those sort of industries. So, and all our business champions share that. They've come from that industry. So what I've been doing is I've had 2 roundtables so far with leading figures in the mortgage industry, from across all different areas of the mortgage industry, from brokerages to networks to lenders to customers, so right across the board. And then I've done a similar roundtable looking at lending to small medium enterprises, SMEs. Again, with a good mix of people in the room, the Chamber of Commerce, FSB, and so on and so forth. And they are genuine listening sessions. It's not about me standing up and waxing lyrical about what the government's doing, It's about me sitting there and listening to the experts and letting them tell me what's working, what's not working, what government can do to support them. And of course, I'll drop in some of the stuff we're already doing. And then I'm able to feed that stuff directly back into the Labour Party to help shape our policies moving forward, but also into the Department of Business and Trade so that they can see, the work that's been done, what's cutting through and what's really starting to make an impact for these businesses. And there are some stuff. There's challenges, of course. As you said rightly, there's 14 years of mess to sort out here. And that's the one thing I do find in everything I do. It's getting better, but everything is broken at the moment, and we're starting to fix it bit by bit by bit by bit. That's not just rhetoric. That's not just slogans. That is reality. If anybody wants to see the evidence, come and look at my casework, because you can see it's just a mix of stuff from across the board. No one specific thing. But yeah, going back to the business champion role, I think it's a really good thing. It shows that as a government, we are listening. We are listening to the experts, and we will shape how we move forward based on what the experts in industry tell us that we need to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And government can't answer everything, and it needs the business community to step up as well, and it does consult with them, and so they should. It's the right thing to do. So yeah, the introduction of the business champions, I thought, was a very good and sensible way of using backbenchers to actually help the government. Because as you said, Rachel, Johnny, they've got quite a big task. Delivering 2 trade deals in 1 week. I mean, it's almost unheard of, that, isn't it?
The same week their interest rates fell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's last week it felt like a big turning of a corner for government. Yeah. And hopefully, the only way is up from here.
Indeed.
So coming back to your role as an MP and in your constituency, how does it, give us a bit of colour how it works? Okay, so you go in for the first week, you probably don't have a desk. Am I right in thinking that?
I have nothing.
You don't have a laptop, nothing?
you have a laptop.
Okay,
you have a laptop and an iPad.
Oh, that's good.
In fact, I got 2 laptops and 1 iPad, so,
and then
I had the kit.
And an email
And an email that was full up from day one. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So do you sit down with the whips? Do you set yourself some goals? Talk us through the first week of going into Parliament.
So the first week was a whirlwind. It was surreal. So you have your induction day. You come in. We came in. We obviously got told we'd won on the Friday morning. Friday and Saturday were chaos, and then Sunday morning you're in Parliament.
Sunday morning, that quick.
Sunday morning. So me and my other half came. I had my induction. I got my IT kit, security induction, all that sort of stuff. And then we had a tour of the building. And, you're just like, I've been there a number of times before, but this is like serious stuff. This is my new place of work now, So, and then you sit there and you think, oh my goodness me, I've got no staff. I've got all these emails coming in. On Tuesday, I'm going to be sat in the House of Commons for the first time, for real, yeah? And that in itself was an experience, because you felt like you were on a film set. But all these people who you all see in the telly box are there sat next to you, and it's like, and I'm sat next to them now, but you have that whole imposter syndrome thing going on as well. So you have to start to accept that this is you now, and that took a couple of months to get over that whole imposter syndrome thing. You then need to figure out who you're going to have working for you, and you have to start interviews, and that you're not going to have those people on board till maybe a month or so down the line. So until then, it's you, and you are going to have to deal with these hundreds of emails that are coming in every day. And then you've got to figure out what your priorities are going to be. Of course, I set out my 10 priorities for the constituency in my election literature. So I knew them. That's my goal there. But being in Parliament, there's a load of other stuff you can get involved in. And you need to try and link that to the things that you care most about. So which select committee am I going to put myself forward for? Which all-party parliamentary groups, APPGs, am I going to be on? Do I want to lead any of those? What do I want to be known for in 5 years, And all those early decisions can help shape your parliamentary time, from the staff you recruit to which committees you go on, and so on and so forth. It's intense, and everybody wants a bit of you. Think of Southend. They've never had Labour MPs before. It's been consistency. It's been Tories for years. So the relationship with the Tories is already there. There's not a lot of relationships with Labour MPs because there's never been one.
Yeah.
So everybody wants to pitch to me. Everybody wants a bit of time with me to tell me what their priorities are. And you've got to balance all of that. Yeah. So it's crazy. But I think we've just about found our mojo now.
Yeah.
Just about. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you've got a desk by now. That's a good thing.
Well, that's the bizarre thing. And this is quite amusing, actually, because I've got 3 desks. So I've got my desk in Parliament. I've got my desk in the constituency, which, by the way, I'm hardly ever sat at because I'm always out and about meeting people. Yeah. And then I've got my home office desk. And you have these moments that I had it this morning. I was looking for some papers this morning in my parliamentary desk.
Which office is it in?
I can't find them. Where have I put them? And then we just about managed to figure out where they were, and they weren't in my parliamentary desk. So, yeah.
I struggle with 1. 3 would, I think, send me over the edge. Yeah. That is brilliant. You have touched on the fact that you are the first Labour MP for Southend West and Leigh, and Southend generally has never had any Labour MPs. How have you now? What's your aims now? How's the campaigning going on the local side? Do you have a campaign plan already? The door knocking, but also the social media. Yeah. Do you have obviously your team will help you with some of that. The local Labour Party teams, for example. How are you finding putting that plan together and doing that alongside the also meeting with residents and going to events? Yeah,
I mean, to be quite frank, Abdi, I said on the 5th of July, and I said this before we won on the 5th of July, that the re-election campaign will start the second they announce my name in that hall as the new MP for Southend West Leigh. And that's exactly the approach we've taken. So within a couple of weeks, we were back out on the doorsteps, talking to residents, giving out thank you cards with all my contact details on. We got a leaflet printed that went out across the majority of the constituency, just to thank people and tell them what we were working on. And we have a regular social media campaign that's constantly feeding out what we're doing and what we're achieving for the constituency, always making it constituency specific. We do a regular newsletter, which we only started a couple of months ago, but the sign up for that's really starting to grow now. Coffee mornings, as I mentioned earlier, street surgeries, just constant visits. I said I'm working 19 days in a row. That's not just sat in Parliament at my desk. Yeah. This is out there in the constituency. So next weekend, for example, on Sunday alone, I'll be at a walk along Southend Pier. I'll be at a local festival, and then following that, I'll be at the Shanty Festival in Leigh-on-Sea. And that's so important that people see you as part of the community. And that listening exercise you do when you're out there is equally as important. So, yes, we have a strategy for how we engage with our residents, and it started on the 6th of July.
And just touching on that, because you'll probably adapt to speaking to voters and campaigning quite a lot, because in your role when you were in Basildon, Basildon's quite a bellwether area as well, and it's very it's always quite marginal. And I think whenever we win it, we don't win it by two seats or 3 seats. It's always quite a small majority. And you were the deputy leader of the Labour group in that battleground. So what do you think the party can learn about building a voter coalition?
Well, you say I was the deputy leader. That was one of my roles. I was also the deputy mayor, then the mayor.
Oh,
so yeah, my Wikipedia needs to be updated, I think. So I don't know who put that on there, but there's so much more in terms of what I did in Basildon, and I think it's interesting if you look at you call it a bellwether, and actually if you look at the general election. The 2 Basildon seats, the stronghold of the Tory stronghold of Basildon and Billericay, we almost won that. We lost it by 20 votes, yeah? That would have been unheard of, yeah? And then obviously we saw what happened in South Basden and East Thurrock, where we came in second place there, with Reform winning again by 96 votes, I think it was. So both very, very close. And, Basildon's an interesting area. It is a bellwether in a way, but it's becoming increasingly not so when we look at what, I guess, happened this general election. I look at the council there, and they are doing an amazing job of delivering on their promises. So the local elections last year, they went from, I can't remember the exact figures, but a very small Labour group to almost being in full control of the council. And they work closely with the independents there to deliver a common manifesto. They're building council housing for local people. That's always a big fear in a place like Basildon, is that the houses are not for local people. They absolutely are. Yeah, they have addressed the issues with the changes to bin collections. Now that might sound like a silly thing, but to people on the ground, when that bin change came in last year, there was absolute uproar, and the council have now fixed that. Came in a couple of weeks ago, and that's making a genuine difference to people's lives. That's locally, that's what people remember. Yeah. They don't judge you so much on the national politics. Some do, but the majority will look at what you as a council are doing for them locally. And I believe we need to do a lot more of that in places like Basildon. We need to make sure that locally we are delivering, and we are keeping our promises. And then backed up by a fantastic Labour government that's starting to make a difference in other areas of people's lives. Yeah,
absolutely. You can see it with the devolution alone of what the Labour government's doing. Do we control Southend Council?
We do. Yeah. Again, we're not in full control, so we're the largest party, and again, that's been nicely building over the last couple of years, and we're now the largest party, and we are running it with the Lib Dems and some independents. But once again, we are delivering there. We're meeting our commitments to start getting rid of the potholes and the issues with pavements. We're delivering the local events that people want to see with us being a tourist town, and that's so important. And you mentioned devolution and local government reorganisation. Again, this is a huge opportunity for Basildon, for Southend, for Thurrock, and for other towns in Essex and cities in Essex to really show what Labour Council can do when it's at scale like that on new bigger unitaries, which hopefully there'll be more detail on soon. Yeah?
No. So I'm going to bring you back to where we started and what got you involved into politics. So your younger self, walking up those streets and getting people to sign your petition. There will be plenty of young people listening to this who are thinking, how do I get involved in politics? Where do I start? What would your advice be to them?
I think, a lot of people say, oh, I'm not political. I think everybody's political. They just don't realise it sometimes. But yes, you are right. Some people will want to find their way in. And what the advice I always give, your starting point is to figure out where your politics lie. Yeah. So that you can associate yourself with the right political party. And hopefully that's the Labour Party. But we have to live in a realistic world and know that it's not always going to be. So once you figure out where your politics lie, just reach out to the local party and find out how you can help, how you can get involved. Trust me, I've had a number of young people come to me since I've been elected wanting to find out how to get involved in politics. And we absolutely embrace that because they're the future. They're the future of our party. If they share the values of the Labour Party, we should be working with young people to encourage them to come out campaigning, look at youth strategies with us, all those sort of things. So, if it's anything like the Labour Party, reach out to your local party and they'll help you, they'll nurture you. We have programs to help young people develop as well. There's so many different ways you can help too in a party, you know, from organising to getting out there campaigning to perhaps putting yourself forward to be a politician, a councillor, a mayor of the future, perhaps an MP of the future, you know. There's so many opportunities out there. So figure out your politics and then reach out.
And it's always remembering that politics is local. So
yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Well, David, thank you. This has been brilliant and a
pleasure.
great interview. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me in.
That was... Oh, do you want me to do an ending?
Yeah, you can.
Perfect. That was David Sampson, the Labour MP for Southend West and Leigh. And I've been Abdi, your host here on Left on Red Media. Thank you.